In the occupied territories, there is virtually no independent economy. Much of Palestine's economy depends on foreign aid right now. This had drastic effects on the Palestinian people. Hospitals couldn't function anymore. Thousands of people without work. Rising rates of unemployment. Eventually, the international community resumed its aid to the West Bank, but left Gaza cut off. And in summer of 2007, they started increasing or tightening their strangulation on Gaza. They started preventing materials and items that we consider, that we take for granted, items needed for everyday survival, really, from entering Gaza. They had a short list of what was allowed into Gaza, and everything else was not allowed. And this short list basically only included food, some medicine, and sanitary items, and not even all food. So you had things like mayonnaise, ketchup, chocolate, pasta that couldn't enter. They couldn't enter because Israel considered them luxury items. But more seriously, you had baby formula for a while that couldn't enter. You had oxygen for hospitals that couldn't enter. You had a long list of medical supplies and medicines that Israel did not allow to enter. It was an economic war in addition to other forms of punishment on the Palestinian people of Gaza. And one of the ways that this became clear, in addition to what some of Israel's politicians would say, is the research that was done by an Israeli human rights organization, Gisha, as to what was allowed in or what wasn't allowed in. And what was discovered is that anything that would allow Palestinians to produce raw materials, not allowed to enter. So margarine, for example, you can import little packets of margarine, but you couldn't import tubs of margarine for industry, for baking large-scale, large amounts of products. You couldn't allow, thread wasn't allowed in because that would contribute to production of textiles. Gaza's economy was shattered. It was already in trouble, shattered. There really was no economy after that, no basis for an economy, and that's still the situation today. Not only because of what Israel restricts from coming in, but also what it restricts from going out. Palestinians are not allowed to export anything. Palestinians in Gaza needing medical attention are often denied the right to go abroad and get the medical attention that's not available in Gaza. Hundreds of students that have scholarship and placement in foreign universities do not get permission to leave Gaza so they can take up their places in these foreign universities. That's why I said what was happening in Gaza for us represented really the epitome of the international community turning its back on crimes against humanity. And why do I say turning its back? Because reports were coming out about how severe the situation was in Gaza. Rising rates of unemployment, malnutrition, over 60% of children under the age of 5 in Gaza were reported to be suffering from anemia. 29% of pregnant women in Gaza suffering from anemia. There were even reports of stunted growth increasing, percentages of stunted growth amongst children. Stunted growth is often found in the poorest regions, and Gaza is not poor. Gaza is actually rich in its natural resources, but Israel was deliberately making it desperate, deliberately making it poor. So this was a humanitarian crisis that we were seeing, but not as a result of a natural disaster. This was a man-made humanitarian crisis. And in spite of all of the reports that were coming out, nobody was doing anything about it. Nobody was doing anything about it. Nobody was telling Israel to stop. And even if some people were saying, like the United Nations would say, call on Israel to lift or ease its blockade, when Israel said no, no. Therefore, us within the international solidarity movement, we started thinking, what could we do about it? We couldn't access Gaza by land anymore. severity of the situation that we were confronting. And as we wrapped our brains to think of what possibly we could do, we got an email from one of our colleagues that said, "You know, I have an idea. And I've been thinking about this a lot. It might sound crazy, but I think it might work. I think we should sail a boat to Gaza." It did sound crazy. It sounded absolutely ludicrous to us because we didn't have a boat. We didn't even have money for a boat, and we knew absolutely nothing about boats. But as we thought about it, we said, why not? Why don't we put our minds to this and we can do it? And therefore, from the end of 2006, we started mobilizing. Mainly what we needed to do was raise funds to get a boat. And that we found was very difficult because not only did at first we think it was a crazy idea, but everyone that you went to ask for money thought you were crazy, and so nobody really wanted to contribute to this endeavor. So the fundraising was very slow. We wanted to go to Gaza right away, but we couldn't raise the money for it. Until the spring of 2008, when we thought we couldn't wait any longer. That's when I first saw the report of stunted growth in Gaza. So we said this summer we have to go. And basically what happened is most of us emptied our bank accounts, charged our credit cards, we took out loans. We scraped together enough money to get 2 small fishing boats. And we refurbished those fishing boats. And in the summer of 2008, we gathered in Cyprus. We conducted trainings, much like the trainings that we do for the International Solidarity Movement, but even more intense because when you're demonstrating on land, if at a certain point you want to retreat, you can retreat. At sea, it's a little bit harder to do that. We went through every scenario we could possibly think of, from being blown out of the water, to having our ship sunk, being seriously injured, arrested at best. At best, we thought, okay, we could be arrested, but we could also have someone killed. And I remember saying to these volunteers, if you're not ready to possibly be seriously injured or killed, then don't step foot on these boats. And we won't think anything the less of you if you don't get on the boats, because we need a lot of work done on the ground. We need a land team here, we need a land team in various countries. There's a lot to do aside from getting on the boats. But not one person turned back. Not because we were young, naive activists that wanted to be some kind of hero. We didn't have a death wish, nobody wanted to die. We ranged in age from 21 to about 84. Parents and grandparents, teachers, students, parliamentarian, nurses, a doctor, journalists, people that had lives and homes and loved ones to get back to. But we also firmly believed in the power of what we were doing, and that drastic situation calls for drastic measures, and we need to do this. And so on August 22nd, 2008, 44 people got on these 2 small fishing boats, and we started our journey to Gaza. The journey was going to take us well over 30 hours. Even though Cyprus is fairly close to Gaza, 230 nautical miles, our boats were really slow. And really, we prayed that they would just get us to Gaza and we wouldn't sink ourselves. But it was going to be quite a long journey. We had equipped the boats with satellite phones so that we could communicate with the media while we were at sea. About 4 hours into the trip, all of our satellite communications were jammed. When we got closer to the point where we thought, if any place we're going to be confronted by the Israeli Navy, it's going to be about 20 to 25 miles from the coast.